Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking about Melbourne, Australia. Not only is Melbourne not anywhere near being the world's most livable city, but it is also a complete and total shithole. I have complete authority to be talking about this topic as I've lived in Melbourne my entire life, for almost 30 years. So many Melburnians brag about Melbourne being the world's most livable city or being amongst the top 5 or 10 most livable cities in the world. Melbourne used to be the most world's livable city, like in the rankings, for several years in a row, but it's since gone down since then, and I'm not surprised. I'm actually surprised it hasn't gone down even more. And yeah, so many Melburnians just brag about it. We're the world's most livable city, on and on and on, droning on about it. And I'll be going into detail in this video why Melbourne is not only a shithole, but why it's absolutely mind-boggling to anyone who has half a brain that Melbourne would even be considered to be anywhere near the top 10 in the world for most livable cities. First off, I'm going to be talking about the public transport. The public transport in Melbourne is a complete and total joke. If you want some shabby 1970s style public transport with constant delays and just incompetent staff and people who are retarded and don't know what they're doing, the staff, then you'll be happy in Melbourne. It's a complete and utter disgrace, the public transport. I was at a train station once, and the train was cancelled, so there was bus replacements instead, and everyone at the station was waiting 90 minutes. I kid you not, 90 minutes for the replacement bus to arrive. So the replacement bus already takes longer to go to the destination. But the fact that that was 90 minutes late, that's just one example of many of how Melbourne's public transport is shit. Also, a lot of the people on the public transport, you can just tell are deranged, like especially at night, and just causing trouble. Just the general vibe and atmosphere of the trains especially doesn't feel safe at all, and it doesn't matter what line you go on. Whether it's the Pakenham line, the Frankston line, whatever, it's just completely dodgy. I've actually stopped using public transport and haven't caught any of it at all this year. The only exception was when I got a V-line train, but that's a lot better, a lot more comfortable, a lot more smoother, a lot cleaner. So yeah, the public transport in Melbourne is absolutely horse manure. It's just absolute joke. And I'm going to talk about the people in Melbourne. This is another huge plague of Melbourne, is the people. So many people in Melbourne are superficial and arrogant at times, and the amount of rudeness has just gone up exponentially in the last decade or so. Everywhere I go now, people just got shorter fuses, less friendly, more arrogant, more rude, less social. It doesn't matter what part of Melbourne you go, it's like that anywhere. And yeah, it's become an absolute disgrace. Melbourne used to have a lot more friendly people. Like, a lot of boomers tell me that Melbourne used to be a lot more laid back, people were friendlier, but especially in the last decade or so, it's just the total opposite. People are rude, short fuses. The Melbourne people are becoming a lot like Sydney people now. And it's very sad to see. The closer to the city you go, the more you notice it. But even in the outer suburbs, I'm noticing it a lot more and more. Whenever I'm around in the outer suburbs, I have noticed it more and more. And Melbourne people typically judge you on superficial traits, how far ahead you are in your career, what kind of career you have, blah, blah, blah. And I've just noticed it intensifying more and more over time, that Melbourne people are just very superficial. And there's a sense of arrogance that just goes around. Also, in terms of what I just said about the shallow and superficial people, is the money aspect. A lot of Melburnians are a lot more materialistic and money obsessed now than they used to be, and it's just getting worse and worse. And I've seen it everywhere I go. Doesn't matter like if you're near the city or in the outer suburbs, it's just the same, although it's a lot worse closer to the city you go. I used to enjoy going near the city. Now I just don't enjoy it because I just don't get a good vibe at all. Like the atmosphere just doesn't feel great. You know, the unfriendly people, the just the general materialistic vibe in the air. I just don't like any of it. And yeah, I don't enjoy going to the city anymore. Another problem with Melbourne is the crime. The crime has just gone through the roof for the last decade. I actually almost got killed in the city by that prick. What's his name? George Gargasolis. That hit and run rampage. I'm not going to go into huge detail about it, but yeah, when that happened, that's just a surefire sign of how downhill Melbourne has become, like with the crime and just general. It's just yeah, like the fact that there's even hit and run attacks and just nonsense going on, brawls in shopping centres, just out of control mess. And a lot of people don't feel safe going out around Melbourne anymore as much as they used to. And you can just tell, you see it everywhere. People just don't like going out at night anymore. A friend of mine who's actually a boomer said that he doesn't feel safe going out in the city anymore. And, he's lived in Melbourne most of his life, if not all his life. And he lives in a dodgy part of Melbourne as well. So yeah, it's unsafe. Brawls in shopping centres, gangs, just out of control, not safe. And yeah, Melbourne is just becoming really dodgy that way. So you have this whole mixture of materialistic and money obsessed people and people less trustful and less friendly, and then you have all these gangs, and it's just a pure recipe for disaster. And then also you have a drug epidemic as well. I personally believe the media does blow it out of proportion, and I don't know, like last time I heard, like from a few years ago, like meth was pretty big, like in in Australia, but especially in country Victoria, like areas around Bendigo and other places in the country, like ice was pretty big. And even in Melbourne, there are parts of Melbourne where it is. And I'm not sure, because I haven't looked into it, but I'm not sure if in the last few years it's gone down. But I reckon, yeah, there is a problem with that as well. And that's caused by just the lack of social cohesion. Like Australia is stereotyped as this, laid back, friendly country, g'day mate, friendly and laid back. But in the cities, that doesn't exist at all. I'm telling you right now, that Australia does not exist. It does still exist in small country areas, no doubt. But the problem is with those areas, there's lack of jobs, lack of opportunities, the infrastructure is shit, the internet is shit. So that's why a lot of people are flocking to the cities. Like, everyone in Australia is just moving to the cities now, like Melbourne and Sydney especially, because of more opportunities, more money. But the thing is, just the whole, like the social cohesion of Australian culture has just gone down the gutter. Like there's a lot of stereotypes out. Like, a lot of Americans believe Australia's, like there are these friendly, funny people who just hang out at the beach surfing and, having barbecues all the time. But that's not how most Aussies live, especially in Melbourne. Like in Melbourne, you wouldn't even, hardly see that. So, like the culture's gone down the shitter. And yeah, it's the lack of social cohesion, like I said, that's fueling all this shit. I might be doing more videos on this later on Melbourne. But yeah, for the rest of this clip, I'm just going to discuss randomly what other things about Melbourne that make it a shithole. I'm reading off a script this time. I'm finding that it's helping. Yeah. And also, another huge problem with Melbourne is the weather. Like, the weather 6 months of the year is literally shit. Like, it's literally dog shit. It's cloudy and overcast most of the time in 6 months out of the year, from about April to late September. Yeah, April to late September is just shit. And even like, November, December, it can be a bit dodgy as well, like a bit too cloudy at times. January, February, and March are all pretty safe bets. Like, it can be sunny most of the time. Even April can be. May, it starts to get gloomy. But it really depends. Like, sometimes you can have sunny spells in winter, like we have had one recently. The last 2 weeks have been sunny, which is unusual, for winter. But yeah, it's been great. It's been a nice change. My mood is elevated because of it. But yeah, like, Melbourne weather is just shit. And, like, say if you want to go to the beach, whether it's the Bay beaches around Melbourne or going down the peninsula or Great Ocean Road, the water is just cold. Like, even in summer, it can still be cold. Like, in December, it's definitely cold still. But January, February, January and February, it is warm enough. But then March, as soon as summer is over, it just starts dipping suddenly, Like early autumn, the water temperature just dips all of a sudden. And yeah, the summers just come and go, and then the winter type of weather just drags on. And then, it doesn't snow in Melbourne, so you don't get to see snow or anything interesting like that. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now on why Melbourne is a shithole. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out my other content. There's a lot of interesting stuff I've covered. Like, comment, subscribe, and there'll be more videos coming soon.